Hey there, it's Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, Worldwide TV Network, iTube 247 out of Franklin, Tennessee, Women on TV.tv, and iHeartRadio on all platforms around the world. So this is a good film. I call it jewels sometimes. I love finding these films that no one takes the time to see, that they actually end up being very good. Let's start here. So Richard, let's start with you. You popped on last. Who are you and where are you coming from?
My name's Rick Hocutt. I was born in California. My dad was in the music business for years and years, and I bounced around in here and now. By the time I got the gray on my hair, I'm still in California again. And yeah, and my kids live in Nashville, so you're right in Franklin, man. I love it out there. It's really nice.
And then Chris.
Yes, my name is Kristian Kerry. I'm originally from Hungary. I came to the States in 1998. I'm coming from stuntman background. I've been in the movie business for 25 years, doing stunts, doing them still today. And my wife and I moved here in 98. We lived in Texas for about 8 years and moved to Los Angeles in 2005. And yeah. Trying to make a living.
Well, first of all, my hat goes off to stuntmen. There was a great documentary called on stunt women. You can imagine what that's like. And so again, everybody who's in the business of movie respects stunt women and men because that's a tough business. Let's talk about this film. How did this come about for you guys? Richard, you go first.
Okay. I had just finished producing a film called Gone Are the Days with Lance Hendrickson. And I've been around horses my whole life, had met a mutual friend who introduced me to Kristian, I guess, wow. Well, maybe like 8 years ago, Kristian, something like that, yeah. 9 years. Yeah. So, of course, when we did this film, it was a Western. And so I called my friends and I'm like, all right, guys, let's get Western with us. And so after that, Kristian came to me and says, I really want to make a film, would you help me kind of put it together and write it? And he had this idea. And so I just kind of nurtured it a little bit. But the whole idea was really Kristian's. He wanted to tell this really unique story. And I always like kind of socially relevant films, socially conscious films, films that maybe speak out for voices that don't get heard, kind of thing. So it really appealed to me when he said he wanted to make this Native American film, about essentially, for them, a huge pandemic. But at the time, now this is 2016, COVID wasn't even a thing. So we started crafting this, a while ago. So, and that's kind of how it started. So after many meetings and swapping ideas back and forth, I helped him, put together the script but it was really his baby. It's really his idea. And it was a really cool idea.
Kristian, go ahead, talk about it. You get a chance on this one. I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah, it's a strange story. Obviously, I'm coming from Europe. American history was obviously not part of my history, learning in school. And but somehow I was always fascinated. I mean, we were able to see some older Westerns back in the day, and I was always fascinated about the Native American people and the culture and everything, but there was just not enough there to really know. And not until I moved to the States and started working through stunts, because I'm also a horseman, and through stunts, I've been working in a lot of Westerns. And every time we were in need for Native American horsemen in the parts in the film, 90% of the people that were hired came from the Blackfeet tribe, who we are portraying in the film. And I mean, these guys are just insanely, amazingly crazy horsemen. And they're very, very talented. And so, I mean, I've been working with them for like about 15 years now. And it was great because a lot of downtimes, working together for months at a time in a movie. We had a lot of downtime. I was able to find out a lot about their history and stuff. And I did my own research. And I always thought about, and there was always this one question about, is this really true or not, that horses did not exist on this land before the Europeans have arrived. And that was very intriguing to me, to find a story where we can introduce the horses, but also at the same time, what happened to the smallpox pandemic, and how can we kind of connect these two ideas? And actually we were actually lucky in a way when we did our research that we found out that, for instance, for the Blackfeet Reservation up in Montana, it happened within like a half a century, where the first introduction of the horses came in, and also the introduction, unfortunately, the smallpox virus that wiped out 90% of the population. And so we were able to connect the two dots and put it in one story.
Well, you guys may get a kick out of this. So I'm Indian descent, so I'm from the Pequot Indians from Connecticut. So it's like right up the area, Groton, and a lot of people don't know that. So my grandmothers, which is interesting, I think it was like 1983, I think they started working on it. They had the first Indian casino, which was what's it called? Foxwoods Casino. So my relatives of all different shapes and colors are the owners. I chose not to have anything to do with it because I moved to California in 1987. I didn't want to have, so I would have had $55,000 a year and a house. And I'm like, I don't care about that. I'm in radio. I'm going to California. I always found that interesting. And then the other part of that is I had a horse ranch in, what was it, 08 to 2012. So in the world of dressage. And I always felt that I love horses. Horses love kids that are artistic. And the fact that you can display stuff like that, which is why I joked to Kevin Costner about this many times. Kevin, aren't you really Indian? Because you keep telling the stories of things on Indians. And I think that whether it's Yellowstone, whether it's Dances with Wolves, whatever the case is, I think we need more stories like that. So hats off to you guys in doing that, because it's a great movie. It really is. And I'm going to do whatever I can to help you guys get whatever you need for that, because yeah, everybody wants to put their stuff in Sundance. And I said, what about Santa Barbara Film Festival? What about Nashville? Women in Film, we call it SWIFT, Southern Women in Film and Television, out of Tennessee, out of Alabama. I'm in Vegas right now, but I shoot some shows there when I'm in Franklin. So I'm always dealing with them. What about BIFF, Lloyd International Film Festival in Beloit, Wisconsin? It's called the mini Sundance of the Midwest. They have really, really good films. So I'm gonna turn you guys on to them for little things here and there. But I love the story of that. It's a great story. It definitely needs to be seen. And the way things are going now, different types of distribution, not everybody can see everything. So you guys got a hidden gem there, and I would love for more people to see this because it's a really, really good film. And
thank you so much.
You can
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. That means a lot. You know, it really does. Yeah.
Well, it's true. You know, I used to pick films. I still do pick films when I see them, and I want those hidden gems that people aren't picking up. So I tell a lot of these people, yeah, the reason I don't go to Sundance, I'm like, I refuse to go see the movie in the snow. They always ended up coming to me, and I would ended up doing all the interviews anyhow. But it was those things where they do a 10-minute rule. If they don't like something in 10 minutes, they're not going to, your film's not going to get in. They don't have time to watch all that stuff. We in Hollywood Film Festival in Beloit, I've always watched the film from beginning to end, still to this day. I started doing it in 1991 when I was in home video. I used to have to order all the films. And a lot of times I found these films that people didn't take chances on. And they made us a lot of money in the world of home video. If you think back to those days, Quentin Tarantino came from home video. Look where he is. Yeah. Kevin Smith came from there. Look where he is. I chose to be behind the camera and do stuff of watching them. So thank goodness I watched this film, because if I hadn't taken the time to watch it from beginning to end, I wouldn't have seen it. And the reason I watch it from beginning to end, I always want to see where it was shot, who was the catering, what country or state or it was shot in. Those things are very, very important. And you go back to the Indian tribe, hats off to them because they have a great heritage. So congratulations on that. I'm long-winded on that, but I wanted to get all that stuff out because it is really, really important.
Yes, no, absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that. Yes, no, that definitely is. It is very important, I think, to put films out there like that, and also it was, it's important also for me. I mean, it's just one thing that already came out of this, and in my industry, and I mean, in my discipline in the business and the stunt world, the person who actually helped me basically get up there to the reservation and introduced me to people, Denny Edmo, who is also a stunt person. He became our stunt coordinator. This was his first job as a stunt coordinator, which is a step up, where he was able to hire people, and he's in charge of all the action sequences and in charge of training the actors and stuff like that. And I just, the other day, I got a call from a very well-known stunt coordinator, Jason Rodriguez, friend of mine, who is looking for a Native American stunt coordinator for a film that is coming up. And there's no such a thing exists today yet, and so they called me. They said, well, we saw that Danny has been working on your show. They asked me about him and stuff like that. So looks like he's going to have a huge opportunity coming out of this. So I was like, if this is the only, goal that we reach with this film, that I was able to, give some people from the reservation some opportunities, then we reached our goal. I'm totally stoked from that phone call, So that's basically our goal with this,
Yeah, I mean, film is so empowering, Brian, as you know. I mean, and you can reach an audience that you may not ever be able to reach, through the visual and through the art of film. And there's so much talent. Years ago, we tried to do a project on the Navajo reservation, and it's an incredible true story, but we just couldn't get any traction. But and then funding, and indie film's tough, but and especially when you're doing a Native American project. But these voices, need to be heard. I mean, and they have these incredible stories and things. And this idea that Kristian said of first contact is really interesting, and really kind of fascinated me when he came to it. And from the other side, we always see, the history that's force fed to us, but we never really get to see from the other perspective. And, and this is Kristian's first film that he directed with largely, untrained or I shouldn't say untrained, I should say, actors that aren't really used to doing film. And I think he got some amazing performances, in this piece. I mean, my hat's off to him. He really did an amazing job, I think.
Well, the thing I like about this is, for me, it goes back to 1991 when I first started looking at movies. Before, I didn't start movie reviews and more until October of 1993. That's when the idea came. So the reason 1991 is important, because I'll never know how many movies I've watched that year. I watched a lot of movies. 1992, I started keeping track of all these things. So last year I only saw 1,819. That's not a lot of movies to me. I'm like 700 less. And I only saw 3 in the big screen, because the last one I saw was Invisible Man. And I remember seeing it because I was doing an interview with Sergio Mendes for his documentary at the Grammy Museum. And then we walked out last February 25th, which is almost a year now. And then everything closed down for me. That's when everything started to close down. But it's one of those things where there's so many hidden independent films that are really, really good. I get physically pissed off when people don't take the time to watch the films. And I don't want to see the trailer. I just watch the movie. Surprise me. Because if I have to figure it out, and remember, I don't stop the movie. I watch it from beginning to the end. And yes, there's been many times when I had to get on the floor and do push-ups and sit-ups while I was watching a movie to stay awake. This movie, I didn't have to do that. This is a great movie. And I don't know this part. I think I do. So what is the true aspect of, was the horse there with the Indians, or did it come over on one of the ships?
Well, the history of it is that it did come with the Spanish conquistadors.
Exactly.
Horses were native, and then they were hunted out sometime, in the early Ice Age. And, the interesting thing about it, as Kristian said, the Blackfoot tribe and the Blackfeet, the Piegan tribe, they're known for their horsemanship. They became some of the biggest horse traders among the indigenous people, and amazing horsemen. And, if you really look at it, the horse, you have two things here. You have this smallpox epidemic that's killing, 75-80% of tribes. Imagine that number. And yet you have this horse, which gives them, it radically changes their life. That now they can follow, game, and it gives them this mobility that they didn't have before. I mean, it's really a tumultuous time in their culture, and in a very short time, because those tribes were really the last to be exposed to the horse.
Yep.
But in a very short time, they saw what the power of it, and they became, these renowned. Their horses were renowned among indigenous people for, I mean, they were just the premier horse traders of North America.
And the fun thing about that is a lot of Europeans came over and they were fascinated, just like, my Chinese, my Japanese friends, my Asian friends, they've always been fascinated with the American West. Kristian, just like what you said, I find that interesting. And then they always end up making a great movie about it, because they come over, they want to drink the whiskey, they want to get one of the guns, and they want the horses the Western way. Isn't it true, Kristian?
Yes, no, definitely is. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about that. I mean, again, coming over, it's one of those things where they all want to do that. They want to experience that little West, and guess what? They all want to go to Texas, and it's really like, don't they, Richard?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, it's true. There's just this mystique about the West. I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, it was an extremely violent time. I mean, you had, really kind of an active genocide going on, but yet people coexisted. And I mean, it's a very strange time in history, and I'm not sure what the allure of it is, but I have friends in Europe, and I have friends in Asia as well. I have a lot of friends in China that they just, they're fascinated by it. I mean, they just can't get enough. So I don't know, maybe it's because it's just this appeal of something that's gone, but this kind of just no rules, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that appeals to people is, hey, no rules, and you just kind of take care of everything on your own. But yeah, it is just a fascinating time. And, for them to open up their entire land to us, and the resources that they gave Kristian, I mean, it was really, a tribal effort just to have this film done, and it was like a family. I mean, it was really cool.
Yeah, and
I'm really good.
Coming from Europe, it's really it's the unknown, right? Because that's, again, there's something that we didn't hear, or we didn't learn anything about history. We had thousands of years of history, and we're up to here about medieval times. Like that. What the Western world is, what really the West and all that, and especially having the opportunity to come to this country. And I mean, the first thing was immediately, and of course, landing in Texas and being around cowboys, being a horseman, of course, working around cowboys. And I used to do live shows and rodeos. And I mean, quickly, all of a sudden, I was dressed one of those guys, and I had the hats and doing trick riding and doing the whip acts and doing all that. I'm like, I can't even believe it in a short period of time. Just a decade ago, I was still just dreaming and, watching and reading about it. Now here I am. I'm one of the guys now, and also now later on, being part of these movies, doing Westerns and doing stunts in Westerns, and, working with legends that are, in the movie business, stunt people that used to be, rodeo cowboys. And, it's a fascinating world to fall into. And again, it's a constant learning experience still, even today, especially the Native American a part of it, right now for me, just because I, didn't grow up around that, so this is all still new, but it's exciting. I mean, and this is why we did this,
Well, I did know when the horses first came over, because the last name Sebastian, it could be French, it could be Spanish, it could be obviously Indian, whatever. So I saw the birth certificate of where my ancestors came from. They came over on a Spanish trip. He jumped ship, ended up with an Indian squaw in Connecticut, and that's how that kind of started, which is interesting.
Wow. Wow.
And I remember seeing this thing. I'm like, wow, this is interesting, because I never got a chance to know any of my relatives. So that part was fascinating. And then they start the first Indian casino, Fox Hills Casinos in Ledford, Connecticut. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. But when I was looking at this film, what I kept my eye on was I'm looking at the horses. I wanted to know, how much are they trained, the horses are trained? How wild could they be? That was what I kept looking on. Kristian, is that something you pay attention to also?
Yes, definitely. Because if we are looking at it, and again, going back to, I think this even in within the Native American community is still kind of a discussion whether if there were horses or not. You know, some believe they were horses, some don't. But if it is true, I mean, from either regards, but you know, as you know, I mean, and you mentioned the word dressage. My wife actually is also a dressage trainer. You know, these horses, when they came from Europe, they were very well trained. They were military horses, and they were trained for battle. They were trained for all this. So this coming over to this land and not having you know, much of a power to fight against. I mean, these horses were way powerful and way more trained than we think, or you know.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing that we also thought about when we talked about with Ricky. You know, like let's not forget, even if the horses, or if we have scenes where horses are loose and coming, it's not something that they're wild horses that need to be broken into riding or anything like that. They're ready to go. So, you know, that element is also, yes, interesting for sure.
What's your wife's name, and what is she doing in dressage?
Well, she's actually in Florida right now competing. Her name is Sabine Kery. She is she's the elite team on the dressage team. She's actually competing this week to go trying to qualify for the Olympics.
Wait a minute, what's her last name?
Kery. Sabine.
It's first name Sabine?
Yeah.
Out of is it Moore Park area where she would train?
Yeah, Thousand Oaks.
I know who she is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's one of the best in the world.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
she's competing tomorrow and Saturday in Florida at in Wellington, because the qualifying is going on right now for the Olympic. But she's the elite. She's in the first
absolutely.
Six. She's in third place right.
Yeah. My mouth would drop when I would see her from 2008 to 2012. Yeah, she was very nice to me. Yeah, you tell her Sebastian says hi. See if she remembers.
That's funny. It's a small world.
No,
I world. I mean, that's great. Yeah.
Well, I would joke with Kevin Bacon. I'm like, Kevin, I'm more 6 degrees of separation than you are, and he would just start laughing because of all the stuff. It is true, you know. But going back to that, that's why I like those stuff. I felt in the world of dressage, in the horse ranch, because we would take in trouble horses. My partner, she was very good at that, and I didn't know anything about horses before 2008. By the time I was done with my ranch, we're gonna have Mustangs starting later in the year. We're gonna have 8 of them on our ranch. I'll know it was fun because I was like, wow. I would feed them everything. I got to know everything about them. I loved it when kids come over. I would show them how to feed the apple and everything like that. We did it correctly. We never had any accidents. We never had any deaths. We had only one horse call up. And it's because I wasn't there. It was 100 degrees, and I guess a squirrel jumped into the water, and probably came and took it out, or the squirrel kind of jumped out, maybe, I don't know, but the horse didn't drink. And you know what happens when a horse doesn't drink water? And I always tell people this: if a horse won't drink dirty water, you think humans want to drink dirty water? And then they get what I'm talking about. And then I actually saw when, this is why I love and respect horses so much, that I saw why you have to pay so many thousands of dollars. I've actually seen a veterinarian take out the intestines of the horse and clean them. Once I saw it, I was like, wow. And they put it back in. I'm like, this is why you pay the money for that to have happen. We never had any problem. And I was so thankful. And again, these were all problem horses. So again, that's why I'm always looking at it that way. Not only is this a great movie, not only is it engaging, exciting to watch, entertaining, it's emotional. So my rating system is the 4 E's. You'll never hear that anyplace else because there's something that came up with, but it works. That is what your film is. Richard, give a brief description of what the film is for the audience.
Well, it's essentially the story of how do you cope when, you know, you're overwhelmed with death, essentially. I mean, some of the research, you know, there is some fallacies that they say, you know, Native Americans weren't exposed to the virus that Europeans brought. And there's some truth to that. But the majority of research that's been done recently has suggested that these tribes and these people were just overwhelmed. They just couldn't care for the amount of sick that they had. And then
Right.
You know, the smallpox epidemic, I think in the 1828 or 30 wiped out, you know, the Mandan, the Pawnee. I mean, these tribes were very prosperous and huge. And within 3 or 4 years, they were basically gone. The Arikara and tribes like this. So, you know, the film is this man's journey, this young man's journey. He's on the cusp between, you know, a teen and an adult, and it's his journey in trying to navigate this world that's dying around him. And he sees his salvation somehow, and he's heard these stories of creatures that give people mobility and the ability to move, and he runs into an unlikely ally from a neighboring tribe that is a traditional enemy of his, but yet they figure out a plan to ultimately give his people what he thinks is a chance of giving them these horses that he thinks will be able to take them away from, you know, this contact and kind of save his tribe. So it's a journey movie, really, you know, and it starts out kind of his personal journey and ends up being, you know, more of a journey for humanity kind of thing. Now that sounds pretty lofty, you know, but I think when people do watch it, and if they do, you know, really see that, they'll see that those journeys. And I think it's, you know, it's interesting.
Kristian, to your point, this is exactly something that Kevin Costner would have made. The fact that you made it, you end up in his scenario, in my opinion, because it is that good. So hats off to you guys on making that. Hats off to you guys on going for it, taking a chance. Who cares that you didn't get into Sundance? It doesn't matter. As long as it gets into the right hands, that's what does matter.
Exactly. I appreciate that. Yes.
I mean, having your response to it and the way you're talking, I mean, that really means a lot. You know, if it's just one person you reach with your art, that's one person, right? So it means a lot when, I mean, you've seen 1,000 movies in a year. I mean, you know, to speak highly of it like you did, it really means a lot, Brian.
Well, this is something that we would have fought to have this in, but it would have ended in our film festival in 2015 in Hollywood, because we were getting great films. You know, what did we get? We got 1,200 films that year. I saw all of them. Now, here's what I was doing. I was always watching all my regular screenings and stuff, and then I had a whole separate page for just what I had to watch for film festivals, for Without a Box, Film Freeway. And my God, I still have the list, because I've always kept my list of what I saw throughout the years, because I would always say, people are never going to believe that I watched these many films or I've done this many interviews, but I could prove everything that I do, because I can, you know, I should be watching minimum 702 films on home video. I call it home video, meaning at home. I should be watching anywhere from 702 to 718. I never made it past 720 at home. And I should always be watching 23, 26 on the big screen in the theater. Guess what? Theaters are closed. So what was everybody doing when we were locked down? They were watching movies, right?
Right.
I was like, I was always doing that. So I go, keep track of how many movies you're watching. No, I can't. I've given up. I'm like, it's not that easy. Think about it. Think about how many movies you watched just in the month of March when we started the lockdown. Most people started it between March 11th to 15th. And again, you guys, I knew this was coming. I've been on record since October 3rd of 2018 saying this was coming. The only thing I didn't know was the name of the virus, and I didn't know what day it was going to start. But for me, it really started February 2nd in Miami. I felt there. And I didn't even stay for the Super Bowl. I left. I came back to Las Vegas. And then I was kind of locked down until I went in to do Sergio Mendes, because he had a great documentary on Brazilian music coming to the US. And then that was it. Now, I pretty much was locked down from September 23rd of 2019 right up until June 1st of last year by myself. Yeah. So I was prepared. And then you guys will love this. I had my own hand sanitizer going back 4 years ago. What did everybody need last year? Hand sanitizer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, you know, it's interesting. I mean, there were people that saw this, you know, but yet, what do they say about history? It repeats itself, right? I mean,
absolutely.
And this is an instance of it, you know. I mean, this just happened to intersect with that. We never thought we would make a film that would be relevant really to today on that level of this pandemic. I mean, I think people can, relate a little bit. I mean, of all cultures now, it's a little bit more accessible to know what these people went through, with no resources, with nothing, with no knowledge, and this killer that, can't be seen, and it's not really understood. And, I mean, it's scary. And we again, we started this in 2016. I think we finished writing it around 2018 or 19, So, with what's going on today, it's just kind of, it's kind of circumstance, but I do think that people will have an appreciation maybe for, Native American tribes and indigenous people everywhere that have been affected by these kind of events.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this on to four of my film reviewer friends. One of them, he does a lot of our reviewers for the Art de Montague, which is about, environmentally friendly, sustainable, and being net zero. So this goes back to, this is what the Indians were doing. And again, I have Indian in me, so I've always done that. And even on certain properties, I want to make sure the property that we chose in Redding, California, I'm in Las Vegas right now, it's never had any fracking on it. There's never had any fire on it. There's no vortex. There is gold and silver on it, but we respect that because the Indians had that land before we did. So, and that's where our respect goes back to on that. So I'm always making sure that those are very, very important, because maybe a little bit of our heritage, but at the same, respecting what was there before we got there.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all people, right? I mean, we all hurt, we all have emotion, we all feel, I mean, I think sometimes it's this lack of empathy for others' predicament that kind of puts us at odds a little bit, and the indigenous tribes and the Native Americans, I mean, they were people, they had enemies, they fought over territory, I mean, they were no different than anybody else through history. And, I think more of an understanding of their side of that story really needs to be told in film, because it's incredible. And, I don't think anybody's really done this. So, again, Kristian, hats off to him. I got to give him all the credit. He wanted to make a completely Native American film, where their side of the story was told. And I mean, I don't know. And it's pretty incredible to me. I have to salute his vision.
Well, that's the reason why Yellowstone is so great, because you get a chance to see the Indians' point of view. And it goes back to Kevin Costner, because I was there for to do the interviews for Dances with Wolves. And I always tell people, no one wants to do a film of color because they can't get the financing. They think, oh, no one wants to see this. That's not true. Everybody wants to see a different story. And yes, it's going to take a long time. I always tell people it takes an average of 7 years to make a film, because you got to get the financing, and it takes 7 to 9 films to make a documentary, because that's even harder.
Right.
Yeah.
What you did, Kristian, is you put that together with a real film, really, when you think about it, and it's a good film.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was always originally our plan. I mean, when we first talked with Ricky about this, I wanted to make a purely Native American film, and also making it in their language, which was a bit of a discussion at the beginning, but learning, that's another thing that I'm also very proud of, that a lot of people don't know, for instance, about the Blackfeet language that was actually a banned language for over 100 years, that the schools were not allowed to teach and speak. The kids were not allowed to learn their language. They had to speak in English. And just recently, through the Freedom of Religion Act in 1978, I believe, is when they were allowed to again use the language and teach it in school. And we're lucky with a young man, Jesse DeRozier. He's from the Pekin Institute, who is basically, he's dedicated to preserve the Blackfeet language. And he ended up playing the father character for the film. And when he learned that I would like to use the original language, I mean, everybody was very excited about that, of course, because that was a huge thing for them, because there's a lot of people that don't speak it just because they were not allowed to. And grandparents, and parents were just saying that that's just not something you can use. And and you're literally punished for it. And so that was very important to me to not only having a full Native American cast and crew as much as we could, but also using the language. The original language was very important to me.
We got about 60 or 90 seconds left. So Kristian, give your social media links.
We have the SOOYI film, SOOYI_film 2020 is on Instagram, and my personal Instagram is Kristian Kerry, just fully my name.
And then
that's all right now.
Richard, yours.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm an old guy, so I'm not much of a social media guy, but I am on Facebook under RG Hocutt. It's FF instead of TT. It's a joke. When I was typing it in, I accidentally hit it, and Facebook in their infinite wisdom won't allow me to change it now. So my typo is now my name on Facebook. So you can find me there, and of course my IMDb profile and that good stuff. So that's under Richard Hocutt.
I'll make sure we can find it some kind of way. Thank you so much for this. And like I said, Kristian, congratulations. Good job that you didn't give in. You did it the way that you wanted to. That's not easy. You wouldn't have been able to do it with a studio. So my hats go off with that. And then Richard, thank you so much for doing this also, because the stories always need to be told. There's never enough stories to be told. If you can tell the Holocaust all the time, you can always tell stories on the Indians all the time. That's how I look at it.
So great. I couldn't agree more, Brian. I so agree. And thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate your comments, and it was nice to chat with you.
Thank you, Brian, so much. Really appreciate your time.
And I have to always leave everybody like that. I always say this: if you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours, because the world needs it. I'm Brian Sebastian. This is Movie Reviews and More, and we will see you next week.